Hello and welcome to Chapter 11. In Chapter 11, I'm going to teach you about how to teach reading or reading comprehension technique or skill. Okay, in this chapter, we begin to talk about receptive skills and to talk about a specific framework for teaching reading. After that, I'm going to share some CLT questions and what are those questions when you want to teach a reading passage. And the third thing is I'm going to talk about the levels of reading. What are the basic levels? And our students are in which level, in fact, or generally the readers. The next thing is about how to use authentic materials. And at the end, we are giving you a video. One of the instructors called Laura is going to teach her students how to work on a passage. Now, let's go to our framework. Be careful, this framework is based on the PPP model. As you remember, we start with presentation, then we go practice. Okay, so presentation, then we have practice, then the students go and they produce, or is production technique. Now, in the pre-stage of your reading, the students, what should we do? We have to encourage our students to create a very friendly and warm environment for their learning, and we have to activate their prior knowledge. Today the topic is about technology. So we can ask a few questions from our students to see what they already know about technology and its importance in their personal life. Sometimes we can also teach them a few words to improve their vocabulary. Now, in the while part, or while reading, when we encourage students to read a passage, we try to ask them some questions to know whether they understand the whole idea, that is a skimming, or we sometimes ask some specific questions that is going to be for scanning. So we want to know that they know the details in their passage. In the post-reading stage, we try to involve a student's opinion, and we encourage them to talk more, they share their ideas in a class. Now, let's go to some common questions. Sometimes we have some concept checking questions. We are our students to know, do they know the concept? Is it clear for them? Okay, so we all use them in the concept checking questions. Or we say CCQ. The next thing is about, in reading comprehension, we ask some questions regarding the gist. What is the main idea of this passage? What you understood generally from this? Or can say that, are they happy? Are people happy in this passage or not? The next set of questions, they are called detailed questions. So students have to read line by line, underline the keywords, and go for the details. That is called the scanning part. Sometimes we ask some questions to know about the context. Okay, so try to work on such questions when you teach your reading. When we talk about levels of reading, sometimes you have some students, they can easily understand the passage. That level is called independent. It's very easy for them. They can read at their home, in your school. They don't have problem with such passages. Okay, this level though is an independent stage. Sometimes students have still problem with reading passages. So they come to our classes, they come to our schools. That level is an instructional level. Okay, so sometimes passages would be challenging for our students. Sometimes students who are really at the lower levels, they don't like the passages, and the passages are really hard for them. They go for the frustration level. That level would be too difficult for them to follow. Now, in the next part of this chapter, we are offering some guidelines for writing materials for students. If you want to design a passage, sometimes it could be authentic. You go and download it from the internet. You have it from one of your old books, or you use the textbook that is common in your college or in your library. Now, how could you design a kind of plan or a kind of activity or something like a lesson plan for your reading? So please read all these steps, which are very important for your students. The next thing is that we are not going to only use some passages from our books. If we just look outside, we have some authentic materials. Here is the list. For example, you can collect supermarket ads, you can collect receipts from restaurants, you can go and collect some maps from outside, bring them to the class, give them to your students, and they work kind of reading material for your students. Sometimes some teachers, they also use clothing labels, okay, labels. The students have activities in the class. They become seller, they become buyer, they talk about those. Even they are very short, like one line maybe, if you want to write them all, it goes to one line, but that is a very authentic way. Sometimes we use postcards, or I saw that some students and teachers, they work on some comments they collect from their Facebook account, or if they have social media on their mobile platform like WeChat or Telegram, sometimes, or Instagram, they go and get their messages, bring them to the class, and they talk, they share ideas, and they learn from this. Now, the last part of the reading is a video. So please watch the video. This video, as I already mentioned, is by an instructor called Laura. What's the main goal in this video? In this video, we are going to show you a real example of practicing a reading passage in the class. She follows the steps, as we already talked, like the PPP model in communicative approach of language teaching. And the main goal or the main objective is to invite the students to talk more, to share ideas. So she starts with, and in her class, she has pair work, sometimes group work. So please watch it and take notes from the details. That would be a great model for you. Now, in the next step, I'm going to talk about your assignment. If your TESOL 150 is going to be your task 8. And task 8, I'm going to talk what should we do and how could you submit it to your instructor. Now, let's go to the task part and I will explain more. Now, let's go to the task that is related to our chapter, okay, for teaching reading. In this task, you are going to read 5 passages. We selected 5 passages for you, and we want you to do this. Number 1, try to guess the suitable ESL level. Is this passage suitable for beginners, intermediate, or upper intermediate, advanced students? And try to predict the level of reading, okay? For example, there is a kind of chart for you or table for you. We have the text titles like Chewing Gum, Japan, First Clone Horse, War of the Worlds, The Pen Pal. And then just try to read the passages slowly at home. We have 5 passages. Try to write their levels and then tell us what the reading level is. Is it independent? Is it instructional? Okay. You can also underline it for us. And then please tell us how much time you spent for reading each passage, because this is very important to see which factors affect the difficulty of the passage. Just the last thing about reading is that we have extensive versus intensive reading. This is not highlighted a lot in your chapter because TESOL diploma students will read this more. But when we talk about intensive reading, it means that the passages you read in the class for the sake of instructional purposes. Sometimes we have extensive reading. That is extra. You read newspapers, magazines, you go online, you read articles. Those are all extensive kind of reading. Okay? So be careful about these intensive and extensive. And 2 factors affect the level of difficulty in a reading passage. Number 1 is the length of the passage. If you give your students a passage of 200 words, so it could be easier for them to read and understand than you give them 500 words. So number 1, is length is very important, and number two is level of difficulty. Sometimes it has 500 words, but it's quite easy. Sometimes it's only 100 words, but it's super difficult. Okay, so try to have these two factors in your mind when you want to teach. That's all. Go to your assignment, read the passages, and fill the table for us. Good luck with your assignment.